So I went there, and that to me was the closest it's ever gotten to the Paradise Garage. Okay. So once I went there, I was like, oh my God, I'm home. Because after the garage closed, I basically stopped going out to clubs because, once you're in the garage, you're spoiled, you know. So I just stopped going out for a while. I stopped listening to music. Then when I found out about Body and Soul, I started going there on Sundays.
All right, today is October 9th, 2021. Who are we speaking with?
My name is DJ producer Lou Gorbea.
So tell everyone who Lou Gorbea is, for those that don't know.
Well, musically, Lou Gorbea is someone that's been in the scene for many, many years, dating back to about 1981, I want to say. Well, as far as music, but as far as dance, it goes back even further than that. Because I've been going out at the age of about 13 years old. I was sneaking into the clubs. Eh?
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Which clubs?
Well, the first club, I thought about this question earlier. The first club I ever stepped into was a place called the Abbey. It was in Manhattan. And I walked in there, and actually the DJ, his name was George Wheeler. The first time I walked in there, I was just blown away because I've never seen the concept of a big room with a big sound system and tons of people in there partying and dancing and enjoying the music. Back then, it was much, much different than what it is now. Back then, you used to go to a club dressed up, you used to look nice, and when the hustle was out and all of that good stuff. But yeah, that's first club I ever stepped foot into. It's called the Abbey.
Do you remember where it was?
It was, I want to say it was about like 30-something street, like 32nd Street or something like that.
Midtown,
It
okay.
was, yeah, Midtown.
Nice. And then now sneaking out, how did you get away with sneaking out and your parents? Did they not notice that you were gone or you just didn't care?
Well, I used to say that I was going to my cousin's house. Because I used to stay at my cousin's house a lot. And actually, he was the one that actually took me there for the first time, introduced me. And first time I went, then I had to try to figure out how I was going to go back again every week. So the excuse was staying at my cousin's house.
I love it. I love
and
it.
he was living in Chelsea at the time too, so it was like walking distance. So.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Walking distance.
And then after the Abbey, what other clubs did you start going to after the Abbey?
Oh my God. It was the Abbey, the Ice Palace that was on 33rd Street. It was in an office building, but it was the top floor. And the top floor was an ice rink. So what they had done was built a dance floor in the middle of the ice rink. You see people skating around the stage, which was the dance floor, and the sound system was around the entire room. So you would just walk across the ice, get onto the stage, and that's where the party was. That was like the first Ice Palace before the one that came after many years. As far as that, you had the Adrian, it's called the Adrian, the Duplex, the other name. That was on right by Madison Square Garden. I don't remember the street. I want to say it was like 33rd, 32nd, somewhere around there. That was like the third club that I went to. Then after that, I started venturing out. I would go to Brooklyn to like Salsa or Orange Peel. I'm going like way back in this.
Wow. So let's start from the beginning. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I'm originally from Red Hook, Brooklyn. Born and raised in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Went to school in Brooklyn. Then from there, I went to high school in Brooklyn, John Jay High School. Got kicked out of that. So
Wait, why'd you get kicked out?
because I was always fighting. I was one of those bad kids.
You were that kid.
I was that kid. So then my mother had said that she was going to take me to Manhattan. I went to New York School of Printing, which is on 49th Street. Back then it was called New York School of Printing. It's called something different now. It's 49th Street and between 10th and 11th Avenue. And actually from there is when I started discovering clubs in the Bronx, Manhattan. I started going to the bigger clubs because then I started meeting people that lived in the city and they would introduce me to some of these other spots. And that's why I started going to Paradise Garage, the Loft. I would go up to the Bronx. I believe the name of the club was called Reflections. We used to play a lot of hooky and we used to go to these hooky parties. And it was a party that Jellybean was playing at. It was like a hooky party and everybody would go to school, meet up at school and just go up to the Bronx. And Jellybean was playing at that club. So that was another venture of mine, hitting the Bronx. Then from there, I started finding out about other clubs in the Bronx. I basically hung out in the Bronx a lot. Okay, then I went to this place called the 310, which was on Hoe Avenue in Prospect. And that was like major. That was almost like the Loft, but in the Bronx. Okay, it was a small spot and the music was intense. And they always said that the Bronx had the better dances and everything. So of course, I had to mix myself up in there just as well. And yeah, then from there, just trickle on down to basically all the clubs. Then I at that point, I started becoming like a dancer because I was really good in dancing back then. So I used to go to like all these clubs and get into like dance contests and stuff like that. Used to go to the Cork Bottle. Used to go to Salsa in Brooklyn. They used to have dance competitions out there. And then there was always like a rivalry going on between the Brooklyn people and the Bronx people. So everybody always thought I was from the Bronx, but I was actually from Brooklyn. But we used to go up there, in big groups. So then the people would, as soon as we walk in, the people would say, "Oh, here come the Bronx people." So it was, there were times where there were actually fights because of that.
Really?
Yeah, they had quite a few fights about that. About the Bronx coming into Brooklyn and winning their money and their contests and taking their women and all of that stuff. So when you're young like that, you start thinking crazy stuff. So.
Wow. A lot of history. You just dropped a lot of knowledge right there.
Yeah.
I had heard about these hooky parties, but wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast clubbing back in the day versus clubbing today.
I would say that now it's a little bit more free spirited. Okay, everybody goes out and they really go out and don't have a care in the world. They go to a club, they dance, and they just get lost in the music. Back then, it was more like, how, dressing and, dancing and having the right steps and the latest moves and all of that stuff. So it was a little bit more, I would say, not as casual as it is now. Like I said, right now, you go to a club, you dress any way you want. And you go in there, you dance any way you want. You don't care if people are looking at you or not. you know, and coming from, you know, garage era and the loft era, you know how it was. You wore whatever you want and you danced whichever way you want, you know. So it was a little bit more, it's a little more free spirited now than when it was back then.
Controversial question. Which did you prefer better, the loft or the garage?
Actually, I'm more of a garage head than a loft head.
Explain why.
For me, it was the sound system. Sound system and hearing the latest tunes or stuff that wasn't even released. It was always introduced at the garage. So I was more of a garage head. The system just blew you away. And of course, Larry behind the controls, you know, it was intense. Then along, you know, during the years, he came with the video and the live musicians playing with the, you know, with the records and everything. And then the shows, not to mention the shows, he always had like the best shows going on. Lolita, Janet Jackson, Madonna, you name it, they all performed at the garage.
Mm. Do you remember your first time going to the garage? Who took you there and what was your experience? Like what did it feel like to go to the garage, to discover the garage for the first time?
The first time I went with a friend of mine. His name is Miguel Astor. He had taken me to the garage. He says, "Yo, you know, let's meet up. I want to take you to this place uh, in Lower Manhattan." I says, "Okay, let's go." Not knowing what to expect. So when we got there, uh, that was mind blowing too, because as soon as you get in, you're walking up this ramp and you have the lights flashing, walking up to the ramp up to the cashier to pay. And while you were walking up the ramp, you would hear the thumping of the sound system in that ramp. And that was an experience in itself that it's just undescribable. Okay. When I was walking up, I said to myself, "Oh my God, what am I getting into?" And then when you walk in, you see all of these people. It's like, "Oh my God, I'm home," and it was home ever since. It's home ever since.
Wow. Describe the feeling when you're on the dance floor and the DJ is playing your song. What does that feel like?
Uh, wow. I would say if he was playing my song, which he did, basically all of them were my songs, you know, I would stop and I would freeze and I would just absorb the music in itself. And you would actually feel your body go into like convulsions because the sound was just that intense. The bass would just feed right through your body. So you felt everything. And then just closing your eyes and listening to the music and your mind just travels somewhere else, you know. And that's where we go back to the difference between the music now and what it was back then. Back then you would just suck it all up. What's this? Yeah, internet connection is unstable. Okay. But yeah, it was a totally different feeling from when I first started going to clubs.
Then talk to us about the transition from being a club goer. I also known you as a DJ and then also doing your own parties. Talk to us about that transition. Which came first, becoming a DJ or doing your own parties? And how did you make that transition?
Actually, becoming a DJ was like my first. That came before promoting. I had another friend of mine that had taken me to a place in Jersey, Hoboken. Actually, I used to do mobile before that. I used to do mobile parties.
Really? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had played a lot of mobile parties. I was doing like hospitals and corporate events and weddings and parties. I started doing stuff for God's Love We Deliver. They would call me quite a bit, and I would play at some of their parties, which was like a totally different experience itself too. So
How was it different?
the crowds were different, and you had to sort of like conform to the music that they liked, and you try to incorporate what you have to what they like and just make it all melt together. You know, it was interesting. I did it for quite a few years, and I got to know quite a few people, in the gay community, because it was basically run by the gay community, and it was interesting. It was an experience that I can say that I enjoyed. Then from there, a friend of mine had taken me to Hoboken. There was a place called Excalibur. Okay, actually, his name is Mike Cruz, DJ Mike Cruz, who's still around. He's still in the music industry. He's traveling a lot. I went there. My friend took me there. It was a gay club. So I went to listen, and the music was interesting. Mike was playing his ass off. So he introduced me to Mike. So then Mike, he had told Mike that I was a DJ too. So Mike had said, "Oh, okay, you're a DJ. Could you do me a favor? Could you play a couple of records while I go to the bathroom?" I said, "Okay, I'll play a couple of records for you." I started playing. Next thing you know, he didn't come back till the end of the night. Okay, so I wound up playing the rest of the night. So then what happens is the manager of the club enjoyed the way I played, and he offered me a job. Because then that guy, Mike Cruz, moved to Queens, a place called Crash. So lo and behold, I stayed playing at Excalibur for about 10 years, believe it or not.
Wow. All because he went to the bathroom. That's fucking incredible.
Because he went to the bathroom, yeah. And so he went to Crash, and then playing in Jersey was a totally different market too, because then you had your Jersey clubs and, like the Coliseum out in Sayreville. I started, playing at spots like that. There was just a lot of small venues that I would play in Jersey. Then from there, I started going to Body and Soul on Sundays.
Tell people what Body and Soul is.
Body and Soul is where they had the shelter party on Hubert Street. Body and Soul would do their party on Sundays. So I went there, and that to me was the closest it's ever gotten to the Paradise Garage. Okay, so once I went there, I was like, oh my God, I'm home. Because after the garage closed, I basically stopped going out to clubs because, once you're in the garage, you're spoiled, So I just stopped going out for a while. I stopped listening to music. Then when I found out about Body and Soul, I started going there on Sundays. Then from there, it's funny too, from Body and Soul, I started taking an interest to playing music because it just motivated you to do it. So I was looking to get, I bought equipment, and I was looking to get a headphone. And then, of course, when you say headphone, who comes into mind? Ariel. So I had called Ariel. Someone gave me his number. I don't remember who it was. I called him and I told him, listen, I'm playing music and I need a headphone, and I heard you make the best headphones. So he told me, okay, well, come up to where I live and I'll get you the headphone. And at that point, I met Ariel, and he sold me the headphone, and we became best of friends. So at that point, he would invite me down to Body and Soul. And not many people know about this, but I sat in the booth almost every Sunday next to Ariel doing the lights. they used to have like a producer's chair. I used to sit in that chair really quiet because I didn't want to bother nobody. And I didn't want to get kicked out. So I just kept quiet. So from there, that's when the producing a party came into play. There was a place in Brooklyn that I found out about on Front Street. It was one Front Street, and the owner gave us the space, which was the top floor. So I got together with a friend of mine, Fred Peters. He's a DJ. Also, he used to play at the Octagon. So Fred and I had sat down and we discussed and we decided we're going to do this party. And we did a party in Brooklyn, on Front Street, called Destiny. So when we started doing Destiny, we started bringing in a lot of guest DJs. We brought in like Danny Cribbett, Nicky Ciano, Master Kev, Tony Humphries, Louie Vega, Frankie Feliciano. We started doing a weekly party on Saturdays. And then of course, Fred would play, open up for the DJs, or I would play opening up for the DJs. Then that was the party that we were doing in Front Street. And then once I started playing, I was approached by, some promoters, and they had asked me, you shouldn't be promoting, you should be playing music. So at that point, I decided to start playing music again. And then from there, started getting a lot of, gigs. I was producing gigs as well, as far as playing the music for some of these gigs. So it sort of like helped me out understanding how to put together a gig in addition to playing the music. So it worked out for me very well. I wasn't the type of person to wait around for somebody to say, oh, why don't you come and play? And no, I've always felt that I had to create my own. So that's where everything came into play as far as promoting and playing music is concerned.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think the Destiny time is probably the time I discovered you, because at the time I was living in Brooklyn, and I'll never forget, I went to one Destiny party stands out particularly. I don't remember who the DJ was, but I remember you had Arnold Jarvis perform, and then you had Wumi perform.
And Wumi perform.
She turned that shit out. That was the best live performance I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, she had the energy, the crowd was hyped. She had just done those songs with Masters at Work. That shit was live. That shit was, I wish, cell phones had kept video back in the day, because I wish I had footage from that time. Oh my God. That party was bananas.
The funny thing about Destiny too, I didn't realize until a couple of months after that as the party started growing, we were having more people show up. Months after, with the amount of people and everything that was going on at that top floor, the floor actually used to wobble because of the weight. Yeah.
Oh shit.
But when I spoke to the owner, we had discussed it and he felt it and everything. He was noted it was actually designed to do that, because everything was basically steel beams, but even still with steel beams, Yeah. So after a while, I just didn't feel comfortable enough doing that. Could you imagine having a disaster where the floor caved in? That would be like, so actually then I started doing other things. Fred started doing other things, other places as well. But it was a good experience. And you just gave me like a flashback talking about Arnold and Wumi. Yeah.
That party was unbelievable. It was one of those moments where you captured the pinnacle, like you took house music and put it in a bottle, in the sense of you captured the energy of house, because at that time, 90s, early 2000s, I think deep and soulful house was at its pinnacle. Arnold was at the pinnacle of his career. Wumi was she had just done some super hot records. There was this enthusiasm. And I think also people were looking for other parties to go to outside of Manhattan. And the fact that you had something like just right across the bridge in Brooklyn that was easy to get to was just a no-brainer, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a good location. It was just like 2 blocks from the train. It was actually under the Brooklyn Bridge. So as soon as you got off the bridge in a car, you're right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Talk to us. So then after that, you started DJing on your own. But then I also know you as a producer as well, right?
Yeah.
So you wear a lot of hats. Talk to us about the transition to becoming a producer.
Yeah, I guess it's all part of the musical family, producing, DJing, promoting. It's all part of, yeah, the nature of the business. Producing came into effect actually when I started playing music. I walked up to a very dear friend of mine, DJ, that I've known for many, many years, Louie Vega. I had talking to Louie and I says, you know, I'm going to start playing music again. And, you know, so he says, well, Lou, I'll tell you what, you start playing music again, I'll back you up. Anything you need, I'll back you up. I says, okay. So then I started getting an itch and I started buying equipment to produce. The first track that I ever worked on was with this girl named Shirley Martin from Florida. And actually we worked on an album. And back then we actually worked in a studio in Belleville. You know, they had the engineers, we had to pay for the time and everything. And we did some production work. Some of the material that we worked on was released, and some of them actually I still have in the archives in my computer. It was never released. One of the tracks was released on Vega Records, which is the Steel Congo. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but that's one of the tracks that
I know
Shirley
it.
and I worked. Right?
Yes, I know it.
So we had done that, and then after that, I started working on stuff at my house. At this time, I was living in Newark. I had bought a house in Newark, so I set up the studio and everything, and I started working out of the house. Then I also met up with Boulevard East. I'm not sure if you know who they are, but
yeah, I know exactly who they are. Yep.
And James Rivera, and we teamed up as Boulevard East, and we did quite a few releases, joining forces, the three of us. The majority of the material that I've done was released on under that team of Boulevard East and Lou Gorbea.
Tell people who were the members of Boulevard East again.
It was Chris Perez and James Rivera. Then all of a sudden, James Rivera dropped out of the industry. Then Chris Perez and myself started working together. Worked on quite a few tracks together and released actually quite a few tracks. Yeah, we have stuff on King Street. We have stuff on Vega Records. We have stuff on Coco Soul. Actually, some of it was released on my label back in the day when the label was in operation.
What was the name of your label?
It was Omi Tutu Productions.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. Then I was releasing stuff on my label. No, and what it is like you get so consumed with it that you don't really think about it anymore. It's just that you're working and working and doing and doing and doing. So you really don't stop. Like right now, I got to stop and think about, okay, what tracks did I release? Because you were just pumping it out and, you know, working and not really, you know, focusing on it. But yeah, quite a bit of material I've done was with Chris Perez. Then I started doing stuff on my own. I did the Walking on Thin Ice with Anani. She did the vocals on that. Actually, may he rest in peace, George kind of helped me with that as far as studio work. He did some of the keys. Also, Quentin Harris did some of the synthesizers, and then I had Jeff Day, Blumiami. I always have a hard time pronouncing his name. He came in and did live bass, and that was an experience in itself. Working on that particular track.
You said somebody rest in peace, but I lost the audio there. Who rest in peace?
That was George Mena.
George Benna.
George Mena.
Oh, George Mena. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. A lot of fun to work with too.
How many unreleased tracks do you have on your hard drive right now that you haven't put out?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Actually, I'm working on some projects right now with Jose Burgos. We joined forces, and we're working on an EP. One of them was just released not too long ago on Nervous Records. It's a track called Mother, which means mother in Spanish. That was like first production Jose and I got together and released. But we have other material that's in the works to be released as well. Then of course you have like a lot of stuff that I like playing around with, like samples and stuff like that, sitting in here. There was always one particular track that I wanted to do and I wanted to finish, and it's almost finished. It was a Liz Torres track for Mind Games. Okay, that's almost done, and it was just an idea that just popped into my head, and I wanted to do it. I like playing with the classics, and reviving it and giving it like a fresh sound. Like for example, the Walking on Thin Ice, that was like a totally different sound. Same concept, you knew where the record was from, but you're just feeding in different elements to the music at that time. Right. So with the Mind Games, it's almost basically that concept as well.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, all this time when you were clubbing and DJing or whatever, did you have a 9-to-5 job, or was this your whole life the whole time?
No, actually, I had a 9-to-5 job.
So first of all, what was your 9-to-5 job, and how the hell did you balance both?
My 9-to-5 job, I'm sure many people that know me and who are going to see this video, was the director of event planning for New York Cruise Lines, which Circle Line was under that umbrella. Circle Line was the company that furnished the boats for a lot of these clubs, promoters, DJs to have their events on boats. Okay, I was actually the person behind the mechanics at the company putting this thing together. At first, when I started working there, it was totally unheard of. They didn't want to hear anything about parties on the boats and stuff like that. It was predominantly like corporate events, church events, universities, stuff like that I was booking. Then all of a sudden I started putting a buzz in my boss's ear about having parties on these boats. How lucrative it would be if you can have these boat rides where you have people paying admission to get onto these boats. Then you have the bars would make really good money on these boats, because for some reason, when you're in a club, people aren't really spending as much money drinking. Yeah, because with the whole thing about deep house music, nobody really drinks. They go and they drink water out of the faucet and stuff like that. But for some reason, when they had parties on the boat, people would drink. And the revenue after these boat rides, once my boss started seeing what the revenue was, he was like, do you have any more? Can you get any more? And at that point, he basically opened up the doors, and that's when I started getting in touch with everybody to have these boat rides. Yeah.
I knew you pioneered that, because that wasn't being done before. So I knew that was all you.
Yeah.
You broke that in. What if I'm a promoter and I decided to do a boat ride, what could I possibly make on a night with a boat?
On a boat, like I said, the concept of it being on the boat and having great sound and your favorite DJ on that boat,
Mhm.
you can charge a little bit more money than a venue on land. And then plus you had like a 4 hour window where you had to actually get it all in. You had to get your drink on, you had to get your dance on. If you want to meet somebody, you had to get it all done within those 4 hours. So as far as money that was being made, I had designed a special package just for the music industry itself. So normally those boats at that time were going for like 7,800. Okay. At that point, I negotiated with my bosses, this is what we should do. And, people to come in. We brought it down to about $4,000. Okay. If you sold your tickets 75, 100, or whatever it may be, times 600 passengers, you was making some pretty good money. Right? And then after the years had gone by, I had spoken to my bosses as far as getting a commission off the bar to these promoters. So once they reach a certain amount of money at the bar, then the promoter was entitled to like a 10%.
Oh, nice.
So at that point, it started going around. You know how it is. One person tells one person, the other person tells another person. Before you know it, I had everybody doing parties on those boats. Now, when these boat parties first started, the first pilot was when Louie and I got together and we were doing River Ocean. That was really the first dance party that was on these boats. Then after that, of course, everybody else started coming along and having the boat rides. You had the 718, you had the Soul Alliance, you had Jellybean doing his party. Then I started getting in touch with these promoters, real management. His name was Benoit. Benoit would bring like the top DJs that were getting these phenomenal DJ fees to come play on the boat. Then what happens is probably a year or two after, I had brought in Benoit as a promoter to work with the company. And we would basically cover all the cost, and then he would get his salary from it. And it all worked out, very, very well. That was 25 years actually of work with that company. So it got quite a bit done. Yeah. So after 25 years, I said, okay, I'm done. Mission accomplished.
Wow. And then you gave the reins to Moises.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's wild as, how that came about, because when I decided that I was going to retire from Circle Line, I approached, a few people. And the position, actually, I don't know if you know Joanne Jimenez. Actually, I worked with Joanne with that whip-up party. I had approached her and asked if she'd be interested, but it was just a bit too much because, it was a 9 to 5, and sometimes you had to come in on the weekends. So then I was on a boat, Louie Vega's boat ride, and I was talking to some people, and I was talking to Moses. He said, hey, how's everything going? And I said, oh, I'm looking to retire, and, I'm looking to, find a replacement, because they're looking someone that is promoter savvy, that knows the business. So then the conversation came about, and, said, oh, I have to check that out. I says, well, come and check out my boss, talk to my boss. My boss met him, he liked him. My boss asked me, you willing to stand behind me? I says, definitely, 100%. Because if anybody knows anybody, it's Moses.
He knows, he's like the mayor, he knows everybody. Yeah.
So he actually, they offered him the position. I stayed with him for about 4 months, to train with the operation itself. And he basically took the bull by the horns and ran with it. Actually, he's there 3 years now. This is his third year. Yeah, I just spoke to him the other day, 3 years now.
That's awesome. I would think that they probably make more money with the boat rides, the party rides, than they do with the day cruises.
No, it's hard to say because daytime you got to realize that you got tourists coming from all over the place.
That's true, and they have cruises like every half
Yeah,
hour or something like that.
every half hour, and the cruises when I left, those cruises were like $35 a pop.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're talking about daytime; those boats went out crowded each and every time.
Yeah.
Now, second to the sightseeing cruise, of course, the charter department was, yeah,
Mhm.
department that was generating quite a bit of business. You know, that
Wow.
was it. Yeah.
Wow. Um, Looking back on your career of DJ, producer, etc., party promoter, uh, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Uh, I don't think I would do anything differently. I think I was pretty satisfied with, you know, with what I learned and what I executed. I think I was pretty, you know, it's just you have to adapt to the industry and the people and how all of that, how it all comes into play. But I think that I basically did everything. I'm pretty content, with what I was doing. I'm happy about it. If other people are happy about it, yeah, I did my best. But like I said, it's something that I've always think back on a lot of things that I've done. I'm happy with it. Maybe if I didn't have the daytime job, I could have spent a little bit more time in the music industry. But unfortunately, as I hate to say the word unstable, as it is the music industry. If you're not constantly out there and pumping, you know, I was always one to look for stability as far as a job with insurance and a permanent salary coming in every week. I've always had that, my thought. I didn't want to have to sit back and say, okay, where's my next gig? Where's my next dollar and stuff like that. So I always held down a daytime job, But daytime job, I was squeezing in producing, playing music, promoting. It was all, it was a lot. It was a lot. It's amazing. I say to myself, where did I get all this energy to do this? Then you was going to the music conference and it was nonstop. I was traveling overseas when I was doing, Circle Line 2. I would leave like Thursday and come back Sunday. I come back Monday. It was a lot. Yeah.
Mm.
Like I said, I can't say I didn't enjoy it. It was an experience. It still is an experience. I'm not doing as much, but it still is an experience.
How would you describe your DJ style?
I like to play what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I felt back in the day, because all of that is embedded into you. Your music style, let's say, for example, when I first started playing like the underground scene, I would like to play basically everything. My favorite part of the night was an opening set, because the opening set, you're starting off mellow and you're playing stuff that people be like, wow, you actually played that. Say, for example, like the Eagles, um, Michael Jackson, Liberian Girl. It's like when you have a crowd that's like an old loft head crowd where anything goes, you can feed that to them and they would just eat it up. They would dance to it. There was this one particular girl that always comes into mind. At this time, I was doing the Sullivan Room, and she would always come. She wanted to be the first person there because she wanted to hear the first record that was dropped. And this girl would come in, she would hang up her coat, and as soon as she got in, she would start dancing around the entire club, but as if she was floating on air. And for me, that was such a high to see that, because here it is, you have somebody coming in just going with what was fed through that sound system. It was incredible. And then of course you had other people that were there that were, doing the same thing.
Do you remember who that dancer was?
I don't remember her name. Don't remember her name. Actually, I haven't seen her since the Sullivan Room days, believe it or not. She was a little skinny girl, white girl, little skinny girl, short hair, and she would just come and she just float around the whole dance floor. They're interesting. Then you had, of course, other people that would be there just the same, doing it. That was kind of intense. And as you started picking up the music, that's when the people started coming in. And I like to play a lot of tribal stuff. Drums have always been in me. And I play a lot of tribal, and then now with the whole African movement that's been going on, I play a lot of African stuff. But lately, I've been playing a lot of soulful stuff, vocals, instrumentals, not as many, but a lot of vocal stuff. I just played at Fort Greene. I was just in Fort Greene a couple of weeks ago. With Jihad, Johnny, Della Rivera, and Antonio. So I basically knew what format they were going to play. So I didn't want to be like the fourth DJ to play the same format. So I kind of switched it up and I went into classics. Yeah, I try to be a little, you got to stand out a little bit. So I says, okay, they're gonna do the drums. They're gonna do an awesome job with the drums, which they did. But I want to do something different. Then, of course, I dropped in, El Conquistador and Expansion, stuff like that. If you know the classics, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
So it was a lot of fun. Actually, it was kind of intense for me because I haven't been back to New York since this pandemic. So
wow.
getting to see everybody was just like, it was intense. It was intense. There was like hundreds and hundreds of people there. I enjoyed it, really did. And like I said, living here, it's okay, but I can always just jump on a plane and be over there.
Define soulful house.
Soulful house. Soulful house is a song written by an artist telling a story with a meaning. Okay. I guess that's the best description I can give about it. It's an actual song itself, whether you're singing about a love affair, a love affair, God, situation, whatever. That's soulful house. It's music coming from the soul.
I love it. DJing, how important is having a residency in establishing a DJ's career?
I would say back then, yes, but right now, I don't see many people doing that. You don't really have many DJs holding down a residency. The ones that I can really think about is maybe like The Shelter with Timmy, Louie with Expansions, 718 Danny Crivet. Those are really the only ones that I know about that are doing residencies. But the majority of the other DJs don't really hold down residencies. They do a lot of guest DJ stuff. Guest DJ, you come in 2-3 hours, you're done, the next guy comes in. And that whole concept changed as well, because back in the day, when you was a DJ, you was playing the whole night. You talk about 7-8 hours. And now it's like you have DJs that would come in 2-3 hours and then someone else would come in. So I guess, the promoter's idea or concept of a party now, it's feeding different types of music, different types of vibe with different DJs. So I really don't see that happening much. Correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I'm not in the city no more, but I read and I see what goes on, and yeah.
Wow. What advice would you give to the next generation?
Uh, do you create, create? Um, don't wait for somebody to hand you anything. You know, go out there and develop yourself. Networking is really important as far as if you want to become a DJ or producer. Networking and having people know who you are. When I first started, you know, getting into the DJ thing, it was like always making CDs and giving out CDs to people. Because when after the party, people would have the CD, they go home, they either put it in their car and listen to it as they're driving somewhere, or they're home cleaning the house, they put it in. They actually give you that undivided attention to listen to what you're doing. So I did that quite a bit. You know, I gave out CDs, and people started recognizing who you were. You know, so if they see your name on the flyer, it's like, okay, now he's going to be here, so let's go check him out. Now this time, not on CD but live. So you always had, you know, and you just got to stick with it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But as far as music itself, I noticed that, you know, when you start producing is when you start making a little bit more noise. Not necessarily locally, but you're talking about globally. Okay, when you start producing and people start seeing your name on a record or release, you know, produced by such and such, right away they want to know who this such and such is. And actually, I got quite a few bookings from producing and stuff. Yeah. So
Wow,
I would say that producing music is your calling card. You know.
that's so well said. Um, what's next for Lou Gorbea?
What's next? Uh, I'm basically doing a lot of things that I love. You know, things that I wasn't able to do before. I'm actually doing now. Say, for example, right now I have the opened up a cafe here in Puerto Rico.
Oh, you did?
So I do breakfast and lunch uh, cafe, and it's in office building. It's in a doctor's office building. So you know, it's I've always been a foodie. You know, as far as food and creating menus and people eating, and yeah, I've always enjoyed that. Right now, it gives me the liberty to do whatever it is that I want, focusing on the cafe, but then yet focusing on music as well. I'm still in the studio working on stuff. As I said, I have this EP that I'm finishing up with Burgos right now, but I also have a lot of my other material um, that I'm planning on releasing as well. The good thing about things right now, as far as computers, I can be here working on something, and if you're a keyboard player, I could just send it to you. You can play it, and we can watch each other, and we can, you know, critique what we're doing and make suggestions, and you could just send it back, track produced. So that's basically where I'm at right now. You know, I'm working with other people online, and we'll see what happens. We have more stuff coming, so stay tuned. You know?
What happened to New York? You know, there was a time when, you know, at least the era you're talking about, you can go out 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore.
Well, I would say that, you know, what we were doing back then, uh, we were young. We really didn't care about, you know, going to work being tired and, you know, going out and going to work be tired and spending the money. And right now, well, the generation back then, you know, they're still going out now. Now they're a little bit more conscious about, you know, how much I'm going to spend to get into a club, and, you know, how much am I going to spend on drinks and then transportation. I got to get up in the morning. A lot of people have that mindset now. But back then, you know, you really didn't care. You just went, you know. No, that's basically it. And nobody's really going out during the week. You know, like on the weekend, they would go out. You get a lot of people that would go out, you know, like a Wednesdays with what what's the name of the party again? Oh my God. What we were doing at Cielo, what Louie was doing at Cielo. He had a dedicated crowd that would go out on Wednesdays, you know. But other than that, who would really go out, you know, during the week, like Monday or Tuesday? You'd have some people that would go out, but it wouldn't be as intense as it were Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Yeah,
So I would say the majority of the people that, you know, the clubs that I played at have been doing it for years. So they're a little bit more conscious about where they're gonna go now, how much money they're gonna spend, opposed to a younger crowd. I don't see the younger generation as involved as we were when we were going out. There are some people, but if we were to get the younger generation as we were back then, I would say that it would keep everything fresh, alive, you know. But like I said, I've seen, you know, younger crowds in these clubs, but I've seen a lot of people that have been doing it for years.
I love it. Those are the questions that I had. Anything else you want to talk about?
I do miss New York. I tell you
Really?
that. Yeah. Like I said, you know, being a city boy all my life, and, you know, coming to the country, because I actually live in the country. I'm up in the mountain.
So where in Puerto Rico are you?
I'm in a town called Mayagüez.
Uh-huh.
I'm like 25 minutes up into the mountain, and it doesn't get as raw as this. This is raw. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm enjoying it. I enjoy the peace and quiet. You know, you have the crickets, you have the roosters. You know, it's just something about it that gives you peace of mind. You know, but then sometimes it can, you know, get overwhelming. It's like, okay, I need to hop on a plane. Like, for example, this weekend coming up, I'm going to Miami. You know, I'm going to take a 3-day week. Then once I come back from Miami, I'm going to New York for the Halloween party. Doing a Halloween party at Now and Then. I don't know if you know Madeline. She does that. She goes by Mad Diva Productions. We did a party at Now and Then a few months ago, and actually she's doing it on her own this time. So it's going to be the 30th of October. It's going to be at Now and Then, which is in Brooklyn. Nice sound system, nice crowd, costume party, prizes. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that's sort of my getaway. Yeah, my getaway to unwind as well. Gigs, I always get gigs. I don't take as many as before because of the travel thing, but yeah, I'm still doing the gigs. I'm still doing the productions. I still keep in touch with a lot of people. My best friends, you know, that are back home, they constantly calling me. And when I come to the city, we get together. Uh, I want to give a shout out to Tony Prince. Tony Prince has like been, you know, a loyal friend to me as far as coming to every party and promoting. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to, you know, DJ FM. I want to give a shout out to Cat Ayala, who's been a friend of mine for many years. Joey Lanos, David DePino, yeah, it's basically everybody. I could just go on and on with names, but you know, it's always good to see them. It's always good to hear from them. So that's basically it. Yeah, I'm doing what I'm enjoying right now. You know, there always comes a time where you gotta start moving back and creating and developing and doing new things. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate your time. This was a great conversation, and I'll let you know when it goes live.
Absolutely. I'd like to send it out to a couple of people as well. All right.
Absolutely. Definitely, man.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Peace.
Have a good day. All right. Peace.
All right.